Sir, we can start the session. We are live now.
Yeah. Please, madam, go ahead.
Okay, sir. A very good evening to one and all, and once again a very warm welcome to Dr. Ravindra Kumar Singh, sir, who is the guest speaker for today. And sir will be enlightening us today on the topic of role of state in implementing fundamental duties, which is very helpful in nation building. So a very warm welcome, sir, once again. And now I would like to request our principal, sir, to kindly address our guest speaker as well as the audience.
A very good evening. A very good evening to one and all. A warm welcome to our guest speaker, Dr. Ravindra Kumar Singh, Gujarat National Law University. Thank you, sir, for accepting our invitation and joining us to share your views for today's session. I am confident that our dear participants would learn a lot from you today, and there would be key takeaways. I'm confident of that. I'm also obliged to Dr. Prabhakar Koreji, Chairman KLE Society, Shri Mahantesh Kawadgimat Sir, Governing Body Chairman, Director, Board of Directors, KLE College of Law, MLC and Chief Whip, Government of Karnataka, Dr. Mallikarjunaya, Principal, KLE Law College, Bangalore, and Director, KLE Law Academy, Belgavi, for their continuous inspiration and guidance throughout our webinar series. Under your leadership, we will surely reach new levels in the academic field, sir. With these words, I would like to hand over the session to Professor Pooja to carry forward the session as scheduled. But before that, let me thank once again the speaker today, because the topic is very pertinent and important. And definitely it remains contemporary throughout any time, because fundamental duties is the most neglected part by us. We only speak about our rights, and we never speak about our duties. So definitely it is a very important topic to enlighten our students and make them know the importance of fundamental duties. Pooja, over to you.
Thank you so much, Principal Sir. A very good evening to one and all. It is my privilege to introduce to you all the guest speaker for today, Dr. Ravindra Kumar Singh. Sir is an Associate Professor of Law at Gujarat National Law University, GNLU, and has around 15 years of teaching experience. Sir completed his BA LLB and LLM from University of Allahabad and pursued his PhD from Gujarat University. He was formerly the Dean of GNLU. In the year 2016, Sir was selected for deputation as Indian Council for Cultural Relations, ICCR, rotating chair, visiting professor of Indian Studies at Leibniz University of Hanover, Germany for a period of 1 semester. Sir is awarded the Education Leadership Award at the 26th Business School Affair and Devang Mehta National Education Awards for the year 2018. Sir is an author of book titled Law Relating to Electronic Contracts. He has to his credit various other research papers and articles on a number of topics like constitutional law, contract law, legal education, just to name a few. Sir was the project convener of a project titled Effectiveness of Government Measures for the Reduction of Court Cases, which was awarded to GNLU by the Legal Department of Gujarat Government. A very warm welcome, sir. With this brief introduction, I would like to request you to take over the session. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much for your very nice introduction. Now, I think the slides are visible, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely fine. Thank you. So at the outset, I thank KLE College of Law, Navi Mumbai, Professor Dinkar Gitte, the principal of this law college, and Dr. Amrita Singh for the very kind invitation to this national webinar on the role of state in implementing fundamental duties for nation building. It is indeed my great honor to deliver a session on this supremely important topic. Let me also place on record my sincere thankfulness and sincere appreciation for the students, because I am told that it is the students of KLE Law College, Navi Mumbai, who wanted to have session on this topic, who wanted to have a discussion, or who wanted to hear on this topic. And this fact indeed is extremely applauded, and they deserve a big round of applause, because at a time when most of the people think of or they argue for their rights, there is a group of students who are interested in knowing fundamental duties. And therefore, I must say that students of KLE Law College, Mumbai, you are a great hope for this country, and keep this spirit high. Now, before I commence my session, I would also like to admit that besides authentic and noted sources and texts and documents, I have for today's lecture largely relied upon a consultation paper, which was on effectuation of fundamental duties by the National Commission to review the working of the Constitution. Now, coming to the topic. Now, as we say, as the citizens, so is the nation, which means the nation is what the citizens are. Citizens, they are the building blocks of the nation. They are the units of the nation. There are three important things which together constitute a developed and an advanced nation. What are those three things? In the first place, noble ideals. Secondly, citizens capable of accomplishing the noble ideals. And thirdly, there has to be a strive for excellence by such citizens. Any country who has these three components, I am quite sure that that country will certainly become a developed and advanced very shortly. Now, our father of nation, Mahatma Gandhi, he had been dreaming of an independent India where there will be no poverty, where there will be no deprivation, where there will be no disease, where there will be no ignorance, where there will be no discrimination. His dream could be materialized by all of us only when we have citizens who solemnly resolve to discharge their fundamental duties. These fundamental duties are enshrined in Article 51A of the Constitution. Thus, the future of India lies in acting upon, lies in implementing, and lies in revitalizing and re-energizing the compliance with fundamental duties. One question which should naturally arise to your mind is that why was fundamental duties not from the very beginning part of the Constitution? There could be broadly three reasons attributed for this. In the first place, our forefathers, our framers of the Constitution, who struggled for the freedom, they were persons of very high order. In the sense, they were visionaries. They practiced very high order values in their life. They discharged their societal, they discharged their national obligations. They followed noble ideals. Those noble ideals which inspired our struggle for freedom. To them, these were so basic, so inherent, that perhaps there was no need to mention. According to them, these noble ideals, these high values of life, they are nurtured in the first place at home. And this has been done traditionally. And subsequently, these are supplemented by the education system at schools, colleges, and universities. They were an integral part of the way of life in India. And therefore, as such, no need was felt to incorporate fundamental duties specifically in the Constitution. Secondly, the underlying idea behind fundamental duties were actually spelled out in our preamble itself. If we read our preamble, we get to know that we the people of India, have solemnly resolved to constitute sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic. And we have solemnly resolved to secure to all the citizens of this country justice, liberty, equality, and fraternity. So, what all things are required in order to achieve these noble goals as mentioned in the preamble? Obviously, it is the duty. We need to perform our duty. And by only discharge of duty, we shall be able to, the country will be able to achieve these noble ideals which have been enshrined in the preamble. Third reason for not incorporating fundamental rights, fundamental duties from the very beginning is that if we read part 3 of the Constitution, which provides for fundamental rights, we see that fundamental rights have obligations inbuilt therein. There is just a need to read fundamental rights in such a manner that fundamental duties flow therefrom. So these were the 3 important reasons why we do not find why fundamental duties were not the part of the Constitution from the very beginning. The reason is not that fundamental duties were ignored. The reason is not that our framers of the Constitution, they were not aware of the importance of fundamental duties. Then we know that by 42nd Constitution Amendment Act in the year 1976, lot of changes were made. It was a very big amendment to the Constitution. In addition to other changes, fundamental duties were added. In fact, the government appointed Singh committee for the purpose of proposing constitutional reforms. The committee submitted its report and it made a long list of recommendations. And one of the important recommendations was about insertion of fundamental duties. We know that 42nd Amendment was a controversial amendment as well. So besides effecting other amendments, there was also an attempt to cripple the powers of the High Court and the Supreme Court. And we know that after the emergency ended, the Constitution 44th Amendment Act in the year 1978 was passed. And this 44th Amendment Act, by virtue of 42nd Amendment Act, 44th Amendment Act, many of the changes brought in by 42nd Amendment Act were undone. However, one point which is very interesting is, even by 44th Amendment Act, the fundamental rights were not touched. Now, what is the importance of this fact? The importance of this fact is that fundamental duties. The importance of this fact is that fundamental duties as enshrined in 51A of the Constitution commanded, and still it commands, the confidence of all the political parties. Inclusion of fundamental duties in our Constitution is also in line with UDHR. If we see Article 29(1) of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, it provides that everyone has duties to the community in which alone the free and full development of his personality is possible. It is also in line with constitutions of some of the countries where fundamental duties are already there. Before I actually see what our fundamental duties are, we need to understand that the concept of duty is not alien to our culture. Because if you see the Indian culture, since time immemorial, since ancient time, people in India have had a tradition of performing their duties, even in partial disregard of their rights and privileges. Since time immemorial, kartavya, duty, that is performance of one's duty towards the society, performance of one's duty towards the people, performance of one's duty towards country, towards parents. This was supremely emphasized upon. Actually, rights and duties are the two sides of the same coin. For every right, there is a corresponding duty. Rights flow only from duties which are well performed. Therefore, duty is an inalienable part of right. So, what is duty for X is Y's right. So, what is duty for one is another person's right. If everyone performs his or her duty well, then obviously everybody's right will be automatically protected. Now, this has been our great tradition. However, we also see that with the lapse of time, values degraded. Particularly values in public life became blatantly evident, and our country felt the need to amend the constitution and incorporate these values in the form of fundamental duties of every citizen. Accordingly, by way of 42nd Amendment Act, in form of Article 51A, which is Part 4A of the Constitution, fundamental duties were incorporated in the Constitution. Now, let us see what our fundamental duties are. Another important point, which is important for us to know, is in the beginning there were 10 fundamental duties. Then, by 86th Amendment Act, which was brought out in the year 2002, 11th duty was added. So today there are 11 fundamental duties. Let us try to understand the importance of these fundamental duties, and more importantly, what these fundamental duties are. The first fundamental duty is, and these are the fundamental duties which every citizen of India has to follow. The first duty is to abide by the Constitution and respect its ideals and institutions, the national flag and the national anthem. In fact, if you see, the duty provided in Clause A is a very basic duty of our citizenship. All of us are supposed to maintain the dignity of our Constitution. So when we say we are supposed to maintain the dignity of our Constitution, means we should not, we cannot indulge in any activity in violation of our Constitution. We know that ours is a very vast country. There are so many languages, subcultures, religious and ethnic diversities are there. But still, we need to understand that we are essentially one. I mean, our unit of country is epitomized in one constitution, one flag, one citizenship. We are all governed by the same constitution, irrespective of diversities, irrespective of caste, color, creed, sex, etc. As we understand, our constitution is actually result of many commitments, many promises, and many pledges made by our leaders to the people of our country. Therefore, every citizen not only should refrain from doing any activity which insults Constitution, but we should also do our best to prevent any miscreant trying to show any sort of disrespect to our national symbols. We have to be equally proud of our nation. We have to be equally proud of our Constitution, our national flag, and our national anthems, our national anthem. This first duty also tells about ideals of the Constitution. So we have to respect our Constitution and ideals of the Constitution. What are the ideals of our Constitution? This is the second question. Ideals of our Constitution are provided in the preamble itself. Just some time back, I stated that we have solemnly resolved to secure to all the citizens of this country justice, equality, liberty, fraternity. And when we say justice, what kind of justice? We are to secure to the people of our country justice which is social, economical, and political. Liberty of what sort? Liberty of thought, expression, belief, faith, and worship. Equality of what kind? Of status, of opportunity, and to promote among them all fraternity, assuring the dignity of individual as also the unity and integrity of this great nation. Then the first duty also tells us to respect the institutions of the Constitution. What are the institutions of the Constitution? There are primarily three main institutions of the Constitution: executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. Rest of the institutions fall under one or the other wings of the state. Although they may be independent in their functioning, but they would be largely falling under these three institutions. Therefore, it is our duty to respect these institutions. It may happen that some sort of issue may arise because we may become victim of some executive action. Now, in that case, we have remedy. Remedy is also provided in the Constitution. What I mean to say is, recourse to injustice is also possible by way of the legal and constitutional means. But it does not mean that we have not to respect our institutions. We must respect the institutions, and if there is any grievance which we may have against, let us say, executive, there is a legal recourse. There is a constitutional means by which we can redress our grievances. Then comes the second fundamental duty. What is the second fundamental duty? It is to cherish and follow the noble ideals which inspired our national struggle for freedom. Now, we know that we did not get freedom just like that. It was a long battle of freedom wherein thousands and lakhs of people sacrificed their lives. Now, it becomes our duty to remember their sacrifices, which they made for us, which they made for the cause of the country. But what is more important for us is to remember and rather imbibe and follow the ideals which permeated our unique struggle for freedom. We have to remember that our freedom movement was not just a struggle for getting political freedom. It was the social and economic emancipation of people as well. Its ideals were those of building a just society, a united nation of freedom, equality, non-violence, brotherhood, and peace. Some of the noble ideals which inspired our national struggle for freedom. We must remember these ideals. One was to achieve freedom from the foreign rule, which was the primary one, so that people of India have self-government, which would establish a society where there would be no exploitation of man by another man. There would be no poverty, no disease, no illiteracy, as Mahatma Gandhi used to dream. Second noble ideal was that the objective, which I just stated, could be achieved only when all citizens have opportunities for all-round development of their personality. Third, for the all-round development of personality, we have to have education which builds the character. That is, man-making education is required. And fourthly, such education could be inculcated when precept is coupled with a practice. There is no gap in preaching and practicing. And lastly, the country has to be placed above the self. The third fundamental duty is to uphold and protect the sovereignty, unity, and integrity of India. Now, this is actually a preeminent national obligation of every citizen of the country. In a democratic system of governance, Sovereignty lies with people, as we know. Therefore, to defend our sovereignty is a responsibility. Therefore, this second clause of Article 51A, by necessary implication, imposes a fundamental duty on every citizen that he or she shall not do anything derogatory or upholding or protecting sovereignty, unity, and integrity of the country. We should not do anything by which we undermine the upholding of our sovereignty, unity, and integrity. We should be rather protecting at every cost the sovereignty, unity, and integrity of the country. The fourth fundamental duty is to defend the country and render national service when called upon to do so. Now, we all understand that the present day wars are not fought on the battlefield, battlefield only, nor are they won only by forces, armed forces. The citizens play a very important role in this regard. Sometimes civilians may be required to take up arms in defense of the country. In my view, the present COVID-19 situation is one such situation when we were required and therefore we should render service to our country. How can we render service to our country? How is it termed as national service? By following the protocol and advisories issued by the government. This is, at present, this is the most important national service which we can do as a citizen. The fifth fundamental duty is to promote harmony and spirit of common brotherhood among all the people of India, transcending religious, linguistic, regional, or sectional diversities, to renounce practices derogatory to the dignity of women. This duty, if you see, essentially flows from the basic value of fraternity, which is already enshrined in the preamble to the Constitution. Ours is a very vast country, as I stated just some time back, with a lot of languages, religions, many cultural streams, but we are one people with one constitution, one flag, and one citizenship. The spirit of brotherhood should come very normally among the citizens of our country, because our norm has always been to consider entire world as one family. We believe, our philosophy is that of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. We believe in world as one family. Therefore, the Constitution also casts upon us a fundamental duty of ensuring that all practices derogatory to the dignity of women are renounced. It is for us to rise above the later day degenerations and aberrations which actually tarnish the image of our society. So it's a duty, it's a fundamental duty to ensure that the image of our society is not tarnished. We should not let any sort of derogatory practice being followed against the dignity of women. The sixth fundamental duty is to value and preserve the rich heritage of our composite culture. Now, what does this mean? We know that, ours is one of the most ancient civilizations of the world. Therefore, we can take legitimate pride in having been a civilizational unit without a break for more than 5,000 years. Can you name a civilization older than Indian civilization, and that too without a break? We are all part of this great civilization and culture. Therefore, to preserve the rich heritage of our composite culture is another fundamental duty. Our cultural heritage is one of the noblest, one of the greatest, and one of the richest. Obviously, one of the oldest. What we have inherited from the past, number one, we must preserve it. Number two, we must pass it on. to the future generations. That is also our fundamental duty. Next fundamental duty is to protect and improve natural environment, including forests, lakes, rivers, wildlife, and to have compassion for living creatures. So this is a very important fundamental duty, because in the face of menace of increasing pollution and environmental degradation, this fundamental assumes, in my view, a very, very distinct significance. By protecting our forest cover, by planting new trees, cleaning rivers, conserving water resources, reforesting wastelands, hills and mountains, and controlling pollution in cities, villages, and industrial units, we can help save the future of our fellow citizens and also of the Mother Earth. What is needed is a concerted effort, awareness campaign, and a planned strategy to move forward in this direction, to move forward through voluntary civil initiatives. Government alone cannot bring for us a pollution-free atmosphere. Government can at best make laws, rules, regulations. Ultimately, we have to follow those. So a concerted effort is needed. We have to read Article 48A along with 51A K, that is this fundamental duty. And by reading these two provisions together, we find that there is a duty imposed on the state to preserve the environment under Article 48A, and then there is a fundamental duty imposed on every citizen for the same purpose under this provision, right? Then the next fundamental duty is to develop the scientific temper, humanism, and the spirit of inquiry and reform. For students, this is a very, very important fundamental duty. Now, it is, my dear students, your bounden duty to preserve and promote scientific temper and spirit of inquiry, that is inquisitiveness, in order to keep pace with the fast changing world. Also, the Constitution orders that science and technology must be strengthened with a sense of humanism, because ultimately the end of all progress in human being and the quality of is the end of all the progress is human being and quality of life and relationships which are to be developed by way of scientific progress. So when we say scientific temper, what do we mean? We mean outlook founded on organized knowledge and experience. That is scientific temper. Scientific temper is actually based on reason and rationality, in contradiction to superstition or blind faith. Therefore, scientific temper requires thirst for knowledge, an urge for research, for facts, and a zeal for setting things right. Humanism is primarily rational coupled with emotional quality, EQ. Every person has three elements. One, animality; second, humanity; and third, divinity. Every human being has these three elements. Now, it depends on us what faculty, what domain dominates. If animality dominates, the human will behave like animal, right? If the element of humanity dominates, the person will have humanism, and higher than humanism is divinity. Therefore, care and caution are required against falling into animalism. So if we cannot control this, we may fall into animalism. That is bad behavior, bad conduct. There must be continuous manifestation of humanism in our conduct and in our behavior. And thereafter, every citizen should strive for development to rise towards divinity. Divinity is a quality which is even higher than humanism. So animality, humanity, and divinity. These are the three elements present in every human being. So what form or what element we need to exhibit, we need to manifest, it depends on us. And what will we manifest? What we value more. So we need to behave like that. So what is expected of us is humanism. It is never expected of an Indian citizen to express his animality. The next fundamental duty is to safeguard public property and to abjure violence. Now, it is, in fact, if you see these days, not only these days, we have been seeing for some decades also, it is very unfortunate that in a country where non-violence is preached, the country which has preached to the world, in fact, non-violence, that country sees from time to time sites of senseless violence, sites of destruction of public property. We see some people indulged in destruction of public property or getting indulged in violence. That is why it becomes necessary to prescribe as our basic fundamental duty to safeguard public property and abjure violence. The next fundamental duty is to strive towards excellence in all spheres of individual and collective activities so that the nation constantly rises to higher levels of endeavor and achievement. If you recall, just in the beginning, I informed that there are three things which make a nation a developed and advanced nation. First, noble ideals. We got to know what are the noble ideals. Secondly, ideals enshrined in the constitution. Secondly, capable citizens who can achieve those noble ideals. And thirdly, a strive for excellence. This is the component which is extremely important if we want our country to be developed one and the advanced one. We have to strive towards excellence in all spheres of individual and collective activity. The drive for excellence in all spheres of individual and collective activity is actually the need of the time. In fact, it is a basic requirement in a highly competitive world. This includes respect for professional obligation and excellence. Whatever work we take up, either as an individual citizen or as a group, our effort should always be directed to achieving the goal of excellence. This clause actually has the potential not only to rejuvenate and reconstruct our country, but it has also the potential to raise it to the highest level. Excellence is actually the secret of all the developments and success. Japan and Singapore, these are two great examples before us. You see, it's amazing that Japan stood up heads and shoulders in such a short span of time after the grave devastation in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. What is the secret? The open secret is excellence. The last duty, the last fundamental duty is on every parent or guardian to provide opportunities for education to his child or what, as the case may be, between the age 6 and 14 years. This clause actually defines the role of parents in educating their children so that when they grow up, when the children grow up, they become asset to the country with their intellect highly developed. This clause was introduced, I told you earlier, by 86th Constitution Amendment Act in the year 2000, 2. So this is the 11th fundamental duty. Now, this fundamental duty was inserted along with a fundamental right, that is Article 21A. So, which obligates the state. So the state is concerned with free education. On the other hand, parents with compulsory education. Now, after having seen these 11 fundamental duties, now the next question that should be raised is how to implement fundamental duties, or how to effectuate fundamental duties, I would say, rather than implementation. Implementation and effectuation, these are two different things. So our concern should be effectuation. How to effectuate fundamental duties? There are 4 stages of effectuating fundamental duties. First is awareness. Second is inculcation. Third is aspiration. And fourth is implementation or enforcement. In fact, in my view, if the first 3 stages are done appropriately, perhaps there is no need of the 4th stage. The 4th stage is required only when there is some problem with the first 3. Now you may ask, what is the role of the state? What is the role of the government in this regard? I say, state has to play a very crucial role when it comes to stage 1 and when it comes to stage 4. As regards stage 2, state has indirect role, but not so much direct role. And state does not have much role as regards the 3rd stage. Now, you would be certainly quite interested in knowing what these stages mean. What are to be done at these stages? Let me first start with awareness. Now, just now we saw 11 fundamental duties. And when I read out those fundamental duties, you found that they are so great duties. They are so basic. That's why they are called as fundamental duties. They are fundamental. Every citizen must do that. And all these 11 duties have the potential to regenerate and reconstruct the nation. And that's why the topic is aptly worded. Nation building. If all the citizens perform these 11 fundamental duties, let me tell you, our nation will not only be built, our nation will be perhaps the best, the most developed, and the most advanced in every respect. Not only just economic advancement, I'm saying. So all these fundamental duties have great potential to regenerate, rejuvenate, revitalize, and reconstruct India. But if you see, these duties have been there for so many years on the statute book. But it is an irony that many of the people, many of the citizens of our country, they do not even know about the existence of such a provision in the Constitution, much less the provisions. They may not know about the existence. Forget about the actual provisions. So, and if you see, even very highly educated citizens, they may not be aware of this part of the Constitution. They may not be aware of the 11 fundamental duties. Therefore, it is our solemn duty. That's why I said state has to play a very important role in this regard. State has to create awareness. State has to create awareness. For example, we say noble ideals, but then a question may be asked, what are those noble ideals? You just ask any common person, educated person also, not only just less educated or semi-educated person. You ask, what are the noble ideals which inspired our national struggle for freedom? I doubt many of them will be able to answer. In fact, we need to spread. We need to create awareness. And that's why I said state has to play a very important role in this regard. In fact, the beginning has been made by MHRD, now it is called as Ministry of Education, in teaching values in primary and secondary schools. Similar serious steps are to be taken in the universities and institutes of higher education. So awareness is the first stage. Then comes the second stage, and that is your inculcation. Without awareness, there can't be any inculcation. So inculcation is the second stage. So it is the fundamental duty of every citizen to develop his personality and also the personality of his children or his students, his pupils in the formative stage of their character, of the nature. So, in fact, the purpose of our school should be not just imparting some learning in XYZ subjects, but the real goal is development of the intellect of the mind, body, and the spirit of the learner. So we need to develop the spirit of the learner. We need to develop the intellect. We need to develop the mind. One of the reasons for erosion in the moral values in our society, in the public life, is sheer deterioration in the work culture. It is because of the dilution and deviation of the true spirit behind education. Today, education has lost, I mean, I would not say in every respect, but in many cases, we see education has lost its real goal, real aim. Education is not just for scoring marks. Education is not just for gaining employment. The education is, the true purpose of the education is character building. The need of the hour is therefore to reverse the trend. It is only when devotion, dedication, and determination to duties become a habit, become a part of the nature and character of the citizen, that the duties will be implemented in our daily life. So, in this regard, the teachers have to play a very important role. The gurus, their primary duty is to inculcate human values in their students. The role of the parents is also very important. Parents have to inculcate sanskars, good values, moral values in their children, not only by precepts, but more so by practice. There should not be any difference between preaching and practicing. Then only it can be done. Now, in this regard, I would like to mention the vision of the new education policy 2020. If you see the vision of the new education policy 2020, it aptly describes the real purpose of education. And that's why I thought I must present it before you. You just simply read the vision of the new education policy. What it reads: this national education policy envisions an education system rooted in Indian ethos that contributes directly to transforming India, that is Bharat, sustainably into an equitable and vibrant knowledge society by providing high quality education to all and thereby making India a global knowledge superpower. The policy envisages that the curriculum and pedagogy of our institutions must develop among their students a deep sense of respect towards the fundamental duties and constitutional values, bonding with one's country, and a conscious awareness of one's roles and responsibilities in a changing world. The vision of this policy is to instill among the learners a deep-rooted pride in being Indian, not only in thought, but also in spirit, intellect, and deeds, as well as to develop knowledge, skills, values, and dispositions that support reasonable commitment to human rights, sustainable development, and living, and global well-being, thereby reflecting a truly global citizen. If you see the vision, it is exactly reproduced as it is present in the NEP 2020. You see, mention of fundamental duty, mention of constitutional values, and exactly some of the words, you see, they are very similar to or same as you find in the Constitution. Now, at para 5.24, the NEP 2020 says, all B.Ed programs will also emphasize the practice of the fundamental duties of the Indian Constitution along with constitutional provisions while teaching any subject or performing any activity. It will also appropriately integrate environmental awareness and sensitivity towards conservation and sustainable development so that environment education becomes an integral part of school curricula. One more mention is important. In your NEP, if you get time, I would simply urge you to please go through NEP whenever time permits. There are different fundamental principles provided in this NEP 2020, which are there to guide the education system at large and also the individual institutions. One of the principles I have reproduced here, and what is that? Ethics and human and constitutional values like empathy, respect for others, cleanliness, courtesy, democratic spirit, spirit of service, respect for public property, scientific temper, liberty, responsibility, pluralism, equality, and justice. Now you see, these are such great values enshrined in our NEP also, which means the government has given lot of importance to the fundamental duties while framing its national education policy. So we were in stage 2. First was awareness, second was inculcation. In fact, inculcation, in my view, is the most important stage, because you see, mere awareness will not do, and even after awareness program, the true results are not accomplished. It has to be inculcated, and a test whether inculcation is properly done or not. So sincere and effective inculcation of fundamental duties, particularly in the younger generation, will automatically give rise to aspiration to translate them into daily life. That's why I said it is most important. Inculcation is the most important, because if values are inculcated properly, then the person in whom those values are inculcated properly, that person will try to translate all those noble values into his or her life. Therefore, the test is whether the inculcation has been sincere, effective, is that whether aspiration has arisen in the minds of the people, minds of the students, minds of the children. If aspiration has arisen, then inculcation was properly done. Then inculcation was effective. Otherwise, there was some shortcoming in the inculcation. Therefore, inculcation precedes aspiration, and implementation follow aspiration. So, if inculcation is sincerely and effectively done, aspiration will be developed. And once aspiration is developed, I think we have done our job. We have set of citizens, we have set of people who could take the country forward, because they have developed their character, they have built their moral values. They are the persons who can truly reconstruct the country. Then comes the fourth stage, that is implementation. I say, if awareness is properly done and inculcation is effectively done, then aspiration will automatically be developed and things will be achieved. Then in that case, there is no question of, there is no requirement, I would say, there is no requirement of fourth stage of implementation. But still, if something is missing in the first, second, and the third stage, obviously the state has to resort to the fourth stage, that is implementation or enforcement. And therefore I said state has to play very important role in awareness, stage 1, and implementation, stage 4. And indirectly state has to play a role in the second, that is inculcation also. As regard the third, aspiration, state does not have much role. Fourth stage means state is implementing or enforcing, which means with the power of the state. Actually, fundamental duties, in my view, I mean, it's not a good situation that the fundamental duties need to be enforced. They need to be enforced because we are not following. I mean, the national meaning is that only. That's why in the beginning I told you why the framers, the great framers of our constitution, they did not include, because they did not feel the need to, because that was the way of our Indian life. But since there has been degradation in the moral values, therefore a need was felt to incorporate. And if it is not there, it's not good for the country. Therefore, the state can implement also. Now, how can the state implement or enforce? So, before I tell you this, we must now understand that fundamental rights given in part 3, directive principles of state policy given in part 4, and fundamental duties given in part 4a. They form a compendium and they have to be read together. Now, it is true that there is no single law which provides for enforcement of all the fundamental duties, or which provide for some punishment if fundamental duties in general are not followed. But does that mean that fundamental duties cannot be enforced? I'll come to this point. And before I come to this point, let me just inform you of some of the laws which are there. And let me tell you, these laws were actually not enacted with a view to enforce fundamental duties. No, that was never the purpose. If you see the years in which these statutes were enacted, they were much before the insertion of fundamental duties in the Constitution, except the last one, that is in the year 2009. But if there is an act which is in violation of fundamental duty, then that act may be very well covered by any of these laws. This is the point which I am telling you. The purpose of these laws were not to enforce fundamental duty or not to punish for violation of fundamental duty. But if a person does an act which is in violation of his fundamental duty, and that act can fall under any of these statutes, then the person can be dealt with according to the provisions given in these statutes, including punishment. So, just for violation of fundamental duty, you can't go to the court and ask writ. So court will not issue particular writ of mandamus for enforcing a person to follow fundamental duty. But if there is a violation, if there is an act committed by a person which is violation of fundamental duty, plus that act falls under any of these statutes, then the person will be even punished according to the provisions given in this statute, given in these statutes. So these are some of the statutes which are available there for the enforcement of fundamental duties. Although the purpose of these statutes was not to enforce fundamental duties, the purpose was little different. For example, if you see the first one, that is your the Prevention of Insults to National Honor Act 1971. Now, this act was enacted in order to ensure that there is no disrespect to national flag, to the Constitution of India, to national anthem. And if there is anything, the person will be punished accordingly. If you see the second act, the Emblems and the Names Prevention of Improper Use Act, as the name only suggests, this act was enacted to prevent improper use of the national flag and national anthem. If you see the third one, that is the Flag Code of India. So in order to ensure that correct usage of in correct way people display national flag, this Flag Code of India is issued. So instruction is given from time to time on the subject, and all those instructions have been embodied in this Flag Code of India, which is made available to all the state government, union territories. Then there are several provisions in the IPC which you can invoke in order to ensure that the activities or which encourage enmity between different groups of people on the ground of religion, race, place of birth, residence, language, etc. are adequately punished. Writings, speeches, gestures, activities, exercise aimed at creating a feeling of insecurity or ill will among members of other communities, that can also be punished. In this regard, you can invoke section 153A of the Indian Penal Code. Similarly, 153B can also be invoked where there is some imputation or assertion prejudicial to the national integration. Similarly, the offenses relating to religion, they are covered under sections 295 to 298 of the IPC. Similarly, we have a law called the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act 1967. So under this act, any communal organization can be declared as unlawful association. We have Protection of Civil Rights Act. We have Representation of Peoples Act 1951, because section 123, particularly clause 3 and clause 3, they declare that if any person is soliciting vote on the ground of just religion or promotion or attempt to promote feeling of enmity or hatred between different classes of citizens of India on the ground of religion, race, caste, etc., that will be termed as a corrupt practice. And if a person is indulged in a corrupt practice, then he can be disqualified from being MP or MLA. Similarly, the last statute which I mentioned is right of children to free and compulsory education. This act was also not enacted just to enforce fundamental duty. This act was primarily enacted to enforce fundamental right under Article 21A, right to education. But parental duty and the duty of the guardian is also stated in this statute. Now, coming to the last point of today's session, that is judicial approach to enforcement of fundamental duties. In the beginning, the approach of the judiciary was not to enforce fundamental duties. That was a general approach. But later we find lot of judicial pronouncements where the judiciary started relying upon fundamental duties while interpreting fundamental rights, or while enforcing fundamental rights, or while interpreting questions of law. For example, in this case, Rural Litigation and Entitlement Kendra versus State of UP. So in this case, the court relied upon fundamental duties while deciding the question of limestone mining in Doon Valley. The court observed that the effect of persons intruding with the ecology are detrimental, and the court reminded every citizen of his duty to conserve environment as provided in Article 51G of the Constitution. We find several cases where Supreme Court has upheld the validity of laws relating to ecology and environment and has made directions binding the citizens and state, and the court found the source of its power to do so under Article 51A. In Sachinanand Pandey versus State of West Bengal. Now, in this case, the court observed that whenever a problem of ecology is brought before it, the court is bound to bear in mind Article 48A, that is Directive Principles of State Policy, plus 51A, that is your fundamental duty of every citizen to protect and improve natural environment, including forests, lakes, etc. The court also said that in this case, policy decisions taken by the state are not ordinary to be interfered with by the court. That is the settled principle of law. But if it is question of giving effect to directive principles and fundamental duty, the court is not to shrug its shoulders and say that priorities are a matter of policy, not to be touched by the court. No. The court may always give necessary directions so as to secure implementation of directive principles and state policy. Then, in State of Punjab versus G.S. Gill, the court, went on to say that under Clause E and Clause J of Article 51A, as also the directive principles of state policy given in Article 38(1), the court reminded the administrators of the government that they are also primarily the citizens of this country. Therefore, their vision should be of national interest. Indirectly, the court said that the fundamental duties oblige the administrators of the government to be good administrators. In MC Mehta versus Union of India, 1998 judgment, Article 51A, which provides for constitutional fundamental duties, this article was read by the court for casting duties on the government and for issuing various directions consistent with Article 51A. You must have studied Vellore Citizens Welfare Forum versus Union of India in your environmental law subject. Now, in this case also, the Supreme Court recognized the precautionary principle and the polluter pays principle as essential features of sustainable development and part of the environmental law of this country. So, in this case also the court relied on Article 51A, Clause G, and mandated to the state to protect and improve the environment and to safeguard the forest and wildlife of the country. Bijo Emmanuel versus State of Kerala, you must have studied that Jana Gana Mana case. In this case, as you know, there were 3 children who stood up respectfully whenever national anthem was sung, but they did not join the singing. So the question before the court was whether non-joining in singing national anthem is disrespect to national anthem. In fact, the students, the 3 students were expelled from the school for not showing, the allegation was they were not showing respect to national anthem. Then the matter went to the court. In fact, the High Court also dismissed the petition, and High Court held that there was nothing in the national anthem which could offend anyone's religious belief. Then they approached the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court, however, held that no law mandates the singing of national anthem, which means as of now, there is no law which obligates all the citizens of India to compulsorily join national anthem. For the singing. So there is no law which says that as a citizen, you have to compulsorily sing the national anthem. And therefore, the court said that since there is no such law, therefore, it is no disrespect if a student stands up in reverence when the same is sung. The court was of the view that it is actually true that Article 51A of the Constitution enjoins a duty on every citizen to abide by the Constitution, to respect the ideals of the Constitution, to respect the institutions of the Constitution, national flag and national anthem. But in view of the court, proper respect is shown to the national anthem by standing up when the national anthem was sung. And according to the court, it would not be right to say that disrespect was shown by not joining the singing of national anthem. Right? So, we see that these are some of the judgments by which the court relied on fundamental duties while enforcing either fundamental rights or while giving effect to directive principles of state policy. So, if you see the correlation between these 3, fundamental duties, fundamental rights, and directive principles of state policy, we find that fundamental duty is very closely connected with the fundamental right and directive principles of state policy. You see, fundamental rights are duties cast upon the state to guarantee a dignified life to every person. On the other hand, fundamental duty is the duty cast upon individuals. And these duties are towards the state plus society to ensure that the nation moves towards development. Similarly, the directive principles of state policy guide the policy making of the state, whereas fundamental duties guide the citizens' behavior while conducting themselves as a citizen of the state. However, if you see, there is now a need to shift emphasis from right to that of duties in every walk of life. In fact, this is urgent. Undue emphasis on one's own right without any awareness of one's duty is not a sign of good citizenship. The fundamental duties were actually not intended to be legally enforced by one citizen against the other citizen. Let me tell you, these fundamental duties, 11 in number, they are like 11 commandments, which every citizen is expected to bear in mind and conduct himself towards state and society. Therefore, the endeavor of the state should be not so much in giving teeth to fundamental duties, but to spread awareness of the duties among the people. In fact, in my view, if all the fundamental duties, as I stated in the beginning also, if all the fundamental duties are followed, actually these fundamental duties are so comprehensive that if they are followed to the letter and spirit, then there will hardly be any need to resort to part 3 of the constitution or even part 4 of the constitution. The reason for the same is very simple, because performance of duties by citizens will automatically result in such an orderly administration, such an orderly conduct, that there will be no breach of fundamental rights. And on the other hand, directive principles of state policy will be realized effortlessly. So, and we also found that although the court was reluctant to enforce fundamental duty in the beginning, but now they are relying upon these fundamental duties to a large extent while interpreting fundamental rights or directive principles of state policy. So it is clear that of late, there has been an increasing reference to Article 51A and its various clauses, giving them content and a kind of enforceability. With these words, I conclude my session and I welcome questions, comments, and suggestions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for that wonderful presentation, for the case laws that you have emphasized on, and the explanation. I'm sure the participants have enjoyed this session. Thank you so much, sir. Sir, with your permission, can we take up few questions?
Absolutely fine. Absolutely fine.
Thank you so much, sir. So the first question is from Ms. Varsha Kumare. She is asking, when a common man goes against projects which are killing biodiversity of our nation, he is imposed with punishments. So don't you think it is breach of our fundamental duty, as it is the need of our to strike a balance between human habitat and the nature?
So where is the breach of fundamental duty then?
So, with my little knowledge, as per what I think so, what she feels is that this punishment which is being imposed upon people, that is the breach of fundamental duty.
No, that is not breach of fundamental duty. So if your conduct is, against a particular law, for example, you are doing something which is against environment, which is degrading environment, which is causing some threat to the ecology, you can certainly be punished. And in my view, if you are punished for that act, there is no question of a breach of fundamental duty. In fact, what is your fundamental duty under 51 AG? This is your fundamental duty also. So I don't think this is a case of breach of fundamental duty in any manner. I mean, I don't think so.
Yes, sir, truly. Thank you, sir. So the next question is from Ms. Shweta Thakur. She is asking, what is the relationship between fundamental rights and fundamental duties? Are fundamental duties being given basis for legislative and executive actions?
A relationship between fundamental duty and fundamental right?
Yes, sir. Yes.
So as I told you, that fundamental duty is actually a duty cast on the state. So state has to provide equal opportunity to everyone. State has to provide all the facilities so that all-round development of a person is possible. Whereas fundamental duty is a duty cast on the individual. So fundamental right is duty cast on the state to guarantee a dignified life to everyone, provide all the opportunities so that everyone flourishes to the best of their extent. On the other hand, fundamental duty is a duty cast on the individuals. And this duty is towards the state and society, so as to ensure that our country, the nation, moves towards development. Is it clear, the relationship? What was the latter part of the question?
So the next part of the question is, are fundamental duties being given basis for legislative and executive actions?
Yeah, fine. This is actually a very nice question. See, there is, I mean, absolutely possible for the legislature to make a law in order to implement fundamental duty. 100% it is possible. So, but however, I mean, whatever laws I just showed some time back, these laws were, the purpose of enacting these laws was actually not to enforce fundamental duty. However, an act which is violation of fundamental duty could very well fall in many of those statutes. And if such acts fall in any of those statutes, the person will certainly be punished according to those laws. But if the state wants to actually enforce specifically some fundamental duties, state can very well make a law and mandate observance of fundamental duty, else punishment will be sanctioned. That is quite possible for the state to make.
Thank you so much, sir. So the next question is from one of the participants. He is asking, sir, in case there is a conflict between directive principles of state policy and fundamental duties, can directive principles of state policy override the fundamental duties?
See, if you see, there is no constitutional provision which provides for what will happen if one comes in conflict with the other. But to my knowledge, if you see all the fundamental duties, following these fundamental duties will not contradict any of the directive principles of state policy. For example, if you see quite a few fundamental duties, they are in line with directive principles of state policy. The first question which was asked, that was about environment ecology. So that is given in 48A of the Constitution. That is the directive principles of state policy. And then if you see, that is also provided in 51A, clause number G. That is, there is a duty, there is a fundamental duty to protect and improve the natural environment, including forests, lakes, rivers, wildlife, and to have compassion for living creature. So this is not at all, I mean, in contradiction with the deep directive principles of state policy. Rather, it is in sync with the directive principles of state policy.
Thank you so much, sir. So the next question is from one of the participants. She's asking, so fundamental duties by its nature, they speak about fundamental being something basic.
Yes,
so
yes.
In cases where fundamental duties are not made enforceable by writ of courts, so what is your view upon it, sir?
Yeah, that, I mean, as I said, the person who is asking questions is absolutely right. Since these are fundamental duties, but these are not to be directly enforced by the court, and that was never the intention behind inserting fundamental duties. If unless a particular law is passed, and the law is law is passed for the purpose of enforcing fundamental duty and providing punishment for non-fulfillment of fundamental duty, one cannot directly go to the court for enforcing fundamental duty. But as I told you, there is an indirect route possible. And what is that indirect route? An act is committed which is a violation of one of the fundamental rights, one of the fundamental duties, and that act also falls under any of the laws which I just stated. Then that act will be punished. That act will be dealt with under that particular law, and a person may be punished as well. That is quite possible. So this is the rule. So, but as I told you, it is absolutely open to Parliament to make some specific law for the enforcement of one or several of the fundamental duties enshrined in Article 51A of the Constitution.
Thank you so much, sir. So the next question is,
and the purpose of actually fundamental duty was, I mean, it was not to provide teeth to fundamental duties. The purpose was not that if you don't follow, you will be punished. The purpose was that you need to follow it so as to develop, so as to take the nation forward by developing yourself. So these fundamental duties were there to actually build the character. So as I told you, three things make the nation. First, noble ideals. Second, citizens capable of accomplishing the noble ideals. And third, strive for excellence. So these fundamental duties, if one follows, one will be able to develop as a citizen who could accomplish the noble goals, noble ideals. Please, what is the next question?
Yes, sir. So the next question is in continuation with the earlier one. The participant is asking, sir, what is your opinion? Should we make fundamental duties enforceable?
No, in my view, it is not. See, some of the fundamental duties can be made enforceable by some specific laws, but not all one. See, for example, if you see, there is a particular law I mentioned, the Prevention of Insults to National Honor Act. Now, the purpose of this act itself is to prevent insult to national honor. Now, as per this, what are the what is intended to be prevented? Any insult to, say, national flag, Constitution of India, right? Your national anthem. So, in fact, although this particular act was not enacted to enforce fundamental duty, but basically, this act is a law which punishes a person who shows dishonor to national flag, national anthem, or Constitution of India. So there is a law actually, although the purpose behind enactment of this law was different, but this is a law which implements a 51A, clause number A. Is that clear?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah.
So, I mean, there is a law. For example, I mean, I said this is one law. Although this law was not particularly enacted for this purpose, because it was enacted in the year 1971, and we got fundamental duties in 1976. But in my view, this is one law which can immediately be invoked if there is any sort of insult to national flag, national anthem, Constitution of India. Similarly, I also stated this Emblem and Names Act. As the name suggests, the purpose of this act is to prevent improper use of emblems and names. And in this, schedule is provided as to to what emblems and names this act will be applicable. So if there is any improper use, then the act will be governed by this act. Similarly, flag code. I hope this answer is.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you so much for that wonderful explanation, sir. Thank you. So the next question is from Mr. Sangram. He's asking, why the implementation of fundamental duties by some states are not proper? What is the reason behind this? And what is the easiest way towards implementation?
No, can you please repeat this question?
So the question is, why the implementation of fundamental duties by some states is not proper? What is the reason behind this? And what is the easiest way for implementation?
This question seems to be too general, because I mean, what fundamental duties some of the states could not perform? I mean, question does not say that. See, again, if somebody is not taking cognizance of the matter, we can't help that situation. But in my view, as I said, the best way to implement fundamental duties is by enacting a law. But if you see our fundamental duties, all the fundamental duties are not of such a nature that law can directly be enacted. See, if you say the first fundamental duty, that is to abide by the constitution, obviously law can be enacted. In fact, law is already there. Similarly, if you see the second one, I don't think that is possible to enforce this fundamental duty. That is to cherish and follow the noble ideals which inspired our national struggle for freedom. Now, this cannot be enforced by way of law, in my view, because if somebody does not follow the noble ideals, can you punish? Actually, this is to be imbibed, and that's why I laid a lot of emphasis on inculcating the ideals. But yes, if it is the third fundamental duty, that is to uphold and protect sovereignty and unity and integrity of the country, 100% there can be a law. In fact, this matter will already fall in some of the laws, existing laws. But if you want, if the parliament decides that no, there has to be a specific law which should punish a person who does an act which is against the sovereignty, unity and integrity of the country, well, parliament can pass law. But let me tell you, these acts can very easily be covered under some of the existing laws. So I mean it is just, shall I give some more examples? I can give other examples also. See, for example, if you say the fourth fundamental duty, that is to render national service. See, you are aware that in some of the countries, sometimes they can compulsorily ask citizens to render national service. So law can be made for this also. If you say the fourth one or the fifth one, there are, I mean, of all the 11 fundamental duties, I think, 6 or 7 fundamental duties are such that specific laws can be enacted by parliament for the purpose of enforcement, which means sanction will also be there if there is some deviation in following those fundamental duties. But not for all the fundamental duties laws can be enacted. That's my point. See, for example, if you see the 10th fundamental duty, 11th fundamental duty, that is, the duties on every parent and guardian to provide, opportunities of education in the age range 6 to 14 years. Now, a law is already there, right to, education, right? Now, that law does mention this fundamental duty on the part of the parent or guardian, but it does not provide any punishment if they don't follow. If a parent does not provide opportunity, he cannot be punished that way. So, I mean, in a nutshell, my answer is not for all the 11 fundamental duties there can be laws, because some of the fundamental duties by their very nature are such that they are to be inculcated, they are to be imbibed. They are not to be, they are not there with a view to punish if somebody fails to follow. But yes, there are some of the fundamental rights, as I said, 6 to 7 fundamental rights, for which specific laws can very well be enacted. And if specific laws are enacted, the non-observance of those fundamental duties will be governed by those laws, and people, the violators, can be punished also accordingly. But as I said, for quite a few of the fundamental duties, there are already some laws wherein non-followance of fundamental duties can very well be brought within their ambit. Although the purpose of those laws were not to enforce fundamental duties, but they do cover those acts within their ambit. Is this response clear?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. So with your permission, can we take up one last question?
Yeah, Piyush, yeah, sure. You can take some more questions also. I don't mind.
Sure, sir. Thank you so much, sir. So the next question is, sir, can you please explain how duties are not infringement of rights of a person, but they actually aim to make the environment more conducive for the enjoyment of such rights?
Can you please repeat this?
So the question is, how duties are not infringement of rights, but actually are made with a aim so that the rights could be enjoyed by the person?
See, as I said, rights and duties, they are the two sides of the same coin. Right of one person is actually duty cast on the other person. Now, if act of one person violates fundamental right of the another person, now you know that fundamental rights are basically against the state, but there are some fundamental rights which can be enforced even against individual, right? Untouchability, right? That is also there. Article 23 is there. So there are some fundamental duties, fundamental rights which can be enforced against the individual also. So where such is the case, a person does not, where a person does an act which falls under any of the, which infringes anybody's fundamental right, then that person whose fundamental right is infringed can very well go to the court. And not only that, for example, if there is a person who does an act which promotes enmity between different groups on the ground of, say, religion. Now, this is just an act committed by a person where he, by his word, spoken or written, or by representation or otherwise, he promotes or he attempts to promote on the ground of religion some sort of hatred. Now, that person can very well be covered under section 153 of the IPC, and accordingly he will be punished. I think the provision is for punishment which may extend to 3 years or fine or both. So this way it can be done. But otherwise, see, it is not that if one does not follow a fundamental duty, that will certainly amount to infringement of somebody's fundamental right. If you take example of to cherish and follow the noble ideals, which inspired the national struggle for freedom. Now, if somebody is not cherishing, if somebody is not following the noble ideals, now is it causing any breach of fundamental right of the other person? I don't think it is causing breach of fundamental right to other person. So in some cases, it may amount to breach of fundamental rights, in which case, obviously, one can move the court. But the person moving the court can move the court on the ground of his breach of his infringement of fundamental right. He cannot move the court on account of violation of fundamental duty by the other person. I think this point is clear.
Yes, sir.
See, for example, when you say to develop scientific temper or humanism or spirit of inquiry. Now, what if somebody does not develop scientific temper or humanism or inquiry, sense of inquiry? We can't punish that person. So, because this fundamental duty is of such a nature that, we cannot punish a person, I mean, for this violation. But if somebody is, doing that act which creates disturbance, which is against the spirit of a common brotherhood, then that person, I mean, that act can very well, in my view, be covered by provisions of IPC. I just mentioned 153A.
Thank you, sir. So
Yeah,
the
please.
next question is, so what do you think? Are the other European countries' citizens more aware of their duties than India? And if yes, why so, sir?
See, no, I mean, I won't say all the European countries, but certainly when I see a state like Germany, or not only European countries, if you see Japan, if you see Singapore, see, we should be proud of our great nation. In fact, the first fundamental duty is of extreme importance. That is, first and second, I would say, together. Unless these two fundamental duties are actually imbibed by us, we will not be able to, create the country which, our father of the nation dreamt of. See, when we say we have to abide by the Constitution and we have to respect its ideals and its institution, national flag and national anthem. Now, how many, awareness is not the number one. Awareness is not there. If that's why I said that, if you see, if you ask, not only a common person, even if you ask a well-educated person that is he aware that there is a chapter called fundamental duty in the Constitution? And if yes, what are those fundamental duties? I don't think you will get answer in affirmative all the time. And even if you get, what are the noble ideals of the Constitution? In fact, many of the people who study law, they may know the the ideals of the Constitution. For example, the great ideals mentioned in the preamble, to secure justice, equality, fraternity, liberty. How many people actually follow this? See, the solution lies in the 4 stages. In fact, I say the 4th stage, many of the questions were regarding the 4th stage, that is implementation stage. I would say the real solution lies in the first 3. First is about awareness. Awareness is very important, in which state has to play a very, very crucial role. Second is about inculcation, wherein state has indirect role to play, but their parents have to play very important role, teachers have to play very important role. And third is your aspiration. This aspiration is very important. Unless we aspire to become an ideal citizen, law will not make us ideal citizen. My point is very clear. Law cannot make us ideal citizen. Law can enforce us. Law can compel us. But under compulsion, how long will you do that? That is not how we can build real, character. We can build real character only when we imbibe, we cherish, and we follow the noble ideals which inspired our national struggle. Because I said our national struggle for freedom was not just a freedom from a foreign rule. It was a social and economic emancipation of people. So in my view, to this question, the answer lies in following the 4 stages. And of the 4, the first 3 stages are very important. The minute, in fact, when you say European, they follow this. They follow at least the first three very well. Awareness is there. I won't say about all the Europe, because there are so many countries in Europe. But you see, you take example of France, you take example of Germany, you take example of non-European countries like Japan, you take example of Singapore. So awareness, inculcation, plus aspiration. These three things are very important. And that's why law cannot make us. Law cannot inculcate. Law can, see, I just now refer to NEP 2020. So NEP has, it's a beautiful document. It has provided all those. But who has to implement it? Who has to act upon it? Teachers have to. In terms of NEP, teachers have to. And I, 2 or 3 times, I did say one thing, that is not only by precept, by practice. In our country, there are so many preachers, but do they practice also? So, when I teach, say, constitutional law to my UG or PG students, obviously I'll refer to preamble. I may say all these noble ideals, but before that, I should understand, I should imbibe, I should inculcate those values in myself. Then only, in fact, I have a right to teach actually. So what I mean to say is, this awareness, inculcation, aspiration, these three are extremely important. And without these three, we will not be able to become good citizen. And if we cannot become good citizen, then, what more can we say? And that is how, that is the difference between, an ordinary country and a great country. India had been a very, very great country. Our values were of very high order. We taught to the world so many things. Non-violence, we preached so much. But then the time has come that, there have been a lot of degradations. Now we need to rise above self. We need to change ourselves. We need to develop these characters. We need to cherish and follow these noble ideals. Then we can beat, we can compete, we can beat anyone, and we can compete with anyone. We can truly develop into an advanced and a developed country. So that is my answer to the last question.
Thank you.
Yes, if there is another question, last question means the last question asked to me. Yes. Then maybe some more questions I will be very happy to take up. Please.
No, sir, that was the last question from our side because of the paucity of time. That was the last question, sir.
Okay.
Thank you so much, sir. On behalf of KLE Societies, KLE College of Law, I really express a sincere gratitude to you for accepting our invitation and gracing this event. The way you have explained this topic, it is much needed, sir. Speaking about fundamental duties is much needed for the youth as well. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, sir. And now I request Amrita ma'am to kindly proceed with the session.
Thank you so much, Pooja ma'am. And thank you once again, Dr. Ravindra Kumar sir, for accepting the invitation of KLE Society's KLE College of Law, Navi Mumbai. And sir, I would just like to say that your lecture and presentation was exemplary, and it has educated all of us about the importance of fundamental duties. We always talk about rights, but we seldom discuss about fundamental duties. And I must admit that today you have given us a comprehensive coverage on how fundamental duties are mentioned in the Constitution, as well as why they are important to be followed. Thank you so much, sir, for giving us such a wonderful session. And we all have gained a lot today. Thank you so much for coming, sir. And I would also like to take this opportunity to thank the respected members of KLE management, Dr. Prabhakar Kore, sir, Chairman, KLE Society, Mr. Mahantesh Kavadgimat, sir, Governing Body Chairman, KLE College of Law, Navi Mumbai, and MLC and Chief Whip Government of Karnataka, Dr. Mallikarjun Iyer, sir, Principal, KLE College of Law, Bangalore, and Director, KLE Law Academy, Bangalore, and of course our respected Principal, sir, Professor Dinkar Gitte, sir, for always their blessings and guidance and motivating us for such webinars and such sessions. I would also like to thank my colleagues, Professor Pooja and Professor Salim Khan, sir, for their constant help and support in making our webinars a great success. Again, a big thanks to our student conveners and coordinators, Tejashri and Apsara, and the whole webinar team for their continuous support throughout the webinar. And last but not the least, I express my gratitude to our participants who have attended our webinars in great numbers and made it them a grand success. Thank you so much, sir. Once again, on behalf of Kelly Societies, Kelly College of Law, I just extend my sincere gratitude to you for joining and sharing your knowledge and experience. Thank you so much, sir.
And
Thank
last point, Amrita ji.
Sure, sir.
I must thank the entire KLE management. I mean, all the faculty members of KLE College of Law, Navi Mumbai, and all the students who have attended, plus participants who have attended. In fact, the last question, this is how we can create awareness. Because, normally we do not see any college or university organizing any, seminar, conference, focusing on fundamental duty, right? And if you see many of the texts, those who are teaching constitutional law, if you see, very good text, I'm not saying, ordinary books. If you see very bulky books also, on fundamental duties, they have devoted 2-3 pages, not more. If you see 2-3 pages, not more. In fact, a lot needs to be discussed. And this kind of webinar or in future seminar or conferences must be organized. And whenever we are organizing seminar conference on constitutional law thing, there has to be one technical session or a part of the technical session focusing fundamental duties. At least an awareness is created. So this is how, out of 100 participants, even if 5 participants develop extra interest on fundamental duties, they want to become really good citizens by following all the fundamental duties. In fact, our purpose will be served. So this is one step towards effectuating fundamental duties. So for this purpose, KLE College of Law, Navi Mumbai deserves a big round of applause and my sincere gratitude and thankfulness. And it was indeed my great honor to deliver a session on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for giving us that brilliant start, sir.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. So with this, we'll be ending the session. Thank you, one and all. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.